Hello, thanks for joining me. Today we are going to work on providing a little bit more freedom for the hips, the knees, and the feet. We're going to be using a chair and then mostly doing standing work. So go ahead and have a seat somewhere comfortably. Just beginning by settling your feet nice and firmly into the ground, so that you can really ground your sitting bones. Sometimes it's nice to just get the flesh out of the way. You can have a nice little comfortable 90-degree ankle at your knees and at your hips. And then just find a place to settle in, maybe just allowing the eyes to close for a moment while you just take a moment to clear your mind. Taking a few breaths in through the nose and out through the nose. Just again, allowing your thoughts to settle, allowing your body to settle comfortably into the chair so that we can move from a place of ease rather than from a place of stress, of any tension from the day. As you're breathing, just imagining that you could melt and release any tension away from the shoulders and the neck. Maybe this will just allow you to sit a little bit more upright and easy on your chair. Maybe this could help you create a little bit more length through the spine if you're not feeling tension or around that place between the shoulder blades or at the back of the skull. Maybe you could just imagine that your spine was like a little column, and that the base of that column could be grounded nice and easy in the chair, and that the rest of the column could grow up from there out through the crown of the head. Just taking a few more breaths in this space. And then just allowing your eyes to open if they're not open already. And you're going to take your left foot up onto your knee. So this shouldn't be too uncomfortable, but if it is, maybe just allow your foot to slide down your thigh a little bit. We're actually going to take your last toe and the next toe up and just start to move them all around. I always have this little image of in my mind that the toes are like little tiny tubes of toothpaste that I want to squeeze out till all the toothpaste, the contents of the tube have been pushed out through the top. So you could imagine that, or just imagine that you're moving all the flesh around these toes. Starting with the last and the next toe, and then moving your way up to the fourth and the third toe, doing the same thing. So this might have been something that you've done before, or maybe you practice it quite frequently, but it's a really good way just to let the brain know that you have all 10 of these toes, 5 on each foot, which provide support for each step that we take. And even while you're sitting at your desk, they should really be providing you some support for your legs to rest onto the ground. So move on up to your third and your second toe. Try to spend a little bit of time giving some care and attention to each one. Feeling how there's bones that are separate to each other through each of your toes, moving on to the second and the first one. And when you've finished all 5 of those toes, beginning to separate your toes apart so that you can place a finger between each one, spacing them, trying to get your fingers to go right down to the very base of the toes. But if you can't get there, then just be patient with yourself. The more that you do this, the easier that it is. For me, it was excruciating the first time, and I could barely even get my fingers to go in that space at the top of the toes. But now I'm able to get them a bit further down towards the base. So I should have kind of specified that you want your opposite hand for this foot. So if you're using your left foot, your right hand wants to be the one spacing your toes apart. so that you can take your left hand and you can use it to kind of give the top of your foot a little ring out. So you're imagining maybe that your foot is full of water, or that it's like a sponge full of water, that you could wring all of the water out in both directions. Again, there's lots of bones in this part of the foot, so what we're asking them to do is just to start to move and to kind of just have a little play around each other, so we can ask for some more flexibility through the foot. And then just release those toes out of your hand, take your fingers, and now we're going to explore this pad of the foot here. There's 5 metatarsals that I want you to dig out with your fingers and see if you can feel them underneath that padding of the foot, starting with the big toe and moving your way over towards the little toe. Again, just reminding your brain that you've got this whole pad of support, these 5 toes, metatarsals here, that can support you every time you take a step. And then feel into that arch. We're going to use a closed fist to do that. You're just taking your closed fist along the inner part of the arch, the center part of the arch, and then the outer edge of the arch. And then take your hand and give that closed fist and give your whole foot, bottom of the foot, a little tap. Great. Once you've done that, you're just going to place both feet onto the floor and have a little look down at them. For me, I can notice the difference immediately. This foot's pink, it's got a bit of color to it. The other one looks lifeless and a little bit dead. And I can just feel as I'm sitting here that it feels energized compared to my other foot. And I think that's quite amazing, you know, just a few minutes spent there encouraging some circulation through the foot can make a really big difference. We're going to keep working with this side actually, and we're just going to begin to bounce the leg a bit like one wing of a butterfly. This is something that my good yoga friend showed me, and I really love it. I think it's something that is a good thing to practice every day to keep the hips nice and loose. And the chair is a really nice place to do it because you're not having to kind of work so hard to keep your upper body upright. So try not to collapse here. See if you can think of that long spinal column that you found at the very start of the video while you're moving and bouncing at your legs. So really, it's not about the body moving around. It's about this just little bounce that we're getting through the hip and the knee. And then you can scoop up the foot, scoop up the knee, and just give it a little side to side action. Keeping this shin pretty parallel with your body. You're just asking it to go side to side. You can explore that, make sure that it's not painful or uncomfortable, that you feel good doing it, that it feels like nourishing movement for your hip joint. It's not causing any problems at your knee. And then just give it a little circle around in one direction, circle back around in the other direction, just loosening off any tension in that hip joint. And then place that foot back down on the ground. Again, just noticing the difference between both sides after that little bit of movement through the hip. Has that affected the way that your knee and your foot are kind of feel on the further down the chain? And then we'll move on to the other foot. So you're going to take that foot, the right foot now, to place on your knee, and just start by encouraging a little bit of movement between your last and your fourth toes. So just moving them around, having a little stretch out, a little bit of release of any tension through those toes, working your way up through the fourth and the third toe. So I was listening to something just earlier, and I was talking about how we can tend to hold a lot of tension and actually fear through our feet. I don't know if you've ever been in a really stressful situation where you just feel like everything in your body tenses up, your ears, your shoulders slide up to your ears, and everything just feels like it's tensing up, your toes kind of curl under. So just work with maybe a little bit of intention of giving your feet this opportunity to relax and spread out, and maybe just get a little bit of space to move a bit more freely. Our shoes tend to kind of crunch and hold everything in place, so this is a really nice way to allow them to spread out. Once you've worked your way through your second and your first toe, you're going to take each of your 5 toes, spread them apart, try to get your fingers right down into the base of your toes. As far as they'll go, remember you're not kind of forcing your fingers down, just let them ease into there. And actually, if you just keep your hand there for a second and think about the fingers melting through, that might just encourage them to go down a little bit farther. Taking your other hand, you're going to start to wring out the top of your foot. Again, this is one of those things that might be really excruciating at first, so go easy, be gentle on yourself. If you're really not used to having your feet exposed, like you're used to wearing socks and shoes all the time, then especially just really be mindful of how this feels for your feet. So go easy on yourself to begin with. This is not something you're comfortable so much doing. Take your left hand as a closed fist. Oh, nope, we're going to explore the metatarsals first. So again, just feeling into the pad of the foot here. Another thing to say about that, having your feet in shoes and socks all day, is that we get a lot of sensory input about our environment from our feet. So it might be worth exploring, maybe going barefoot a little bit more and really kind of tuning into what your feet are telling you about the floor underneath you, whether it's cold, smooth, you know, anything like that can be really, really useful information for your brain about the environment. It would be a little bit like us going around all day having gloves on. You can imagine like how little you know about textures and surfaces if you were constantly wearing gloves. So take your fist, we're going to now smooth it along the bottom of the arches, working your way through. And then take that closed fist and give it all a nice little tap all along the bottom of the foot. Then place that foot down. Just notice, hopefully they're a little bit more the same color now. You might have lost a little bit of color off of the first foot because you've had your knee, your foot on top of your knee, kind of cutting off a little bit of that circulation. But hopefully they both now feel a bit more energized, a bit warmer, especially nice in these cooler autumn and winter days to get some circulation down through the feet. So we're just going to start to work through this hip now. Again, seeing if you can find a lovely long spinal column as you're just gently moving, inviting some gentle lubrication of your hip joint. Scooping up the foot, scooping up the knee, and taking it side to side. Make it as small as you need to prevent any pain, discomfort with this movement. You can make some circles around in one direction and then around in the other direction. And then we'll place that foot back down onto the floor. Again, just come to sitting up nice and tall in your chair and noticing how your foot, your knee, and your hip are all kind of organizing themselves and how they feel now that you've just done a little bit of movement. So this is something I would really recommend that you do throughout the day while you're sitting at your desk. Whenever we're kind of sitting like this or like this, you know, you can see how that just puts your whole body out of alignment. And that can cause some really unhealthy habits and strategies for our body to build up. So just doing any of those 3 little things can be really useful throughout the day. Now we're going to come get your chair out of the way. Just put it to one side. And I want you to find a space that you can stand up against the wall. You can get your feet about 6 inches away, and then you can put your sacrum, your ribs, and your head up against it. And just notice what it's like to be here, thinking of your spinal column, how you can be tall from the base of your spinal column all the way up through your head. And then just think about lifting one heel away from the wall and then placing it back down. Just noticing how your weight shifts. Maybe you can need to adjust a few things to not feel like you're going to topple over. And just maybe noticing anything happening through the hips. You're going to take that foot all the way up and lift through the knee, and then place that foot back down. Practice that a few times on this side, just noticing what's happening through the other foot. Maybe for me, I notice how my foot likes to turn in. Maybe I'll just help my brain by putting my hands up against the wall a little bit, not to grip on for dear life, but just to provide a little bit more support. And that way I can spread out my weight through that other foot a little bit more evenly. Let's move through the other side. So you're just starting with the heel peeling away. Now you're really aware of those metatarsals. Maybe you can think about distributing the weight through all 10 metatarsals as you're just lifting the heel. And then lift that foot all the way away from the floor a few times. This side's much harder for me, so I'm going to make a little adjustment and try to do that. So I have given a few people the challenge of doing this every time that they boil the kettle. It's a really good way to start to strengthen your standing leg with a really good kind of alignment from the rest of your body as you're doing this. We'll just do that a few times. And then come away from the wall, give the legs a little shake. And we'll start a few exercises to really warm up the feet, the knees, and the hips a little bit more. So first of all, you're going to take your feet together into a V. And when you bend your knees a little bit, you should be able to see that your knees go over your toes. So go ahead and again, stand up nice and tall. You're going to really in earnest now bend your knees, keeping the heels together, and then lift up through those heels. See if you can keep them connected. Stand up through the knees, keeping the heels lifted, and then slowly lower down. You're going to do 2 more like that. I don't want to see your heels separating at any point that you do this. I'll do that one more time. I don't want to see any falling over here because you're really creating some balance through the central part of the legs. Now we're going to lift up through the heels, keep them lifted as you bend the knees, and then lower the heels. 2 more times. Keep that inner heel connection. That'll keep you balanced and level. Last time. Excellent. Now let's increase the challenge by coming to parallel with the feet. You might need a hand on the wall. That's absolutely fine. Going to start by bending the knees over the toes. So it might be helpful to look into a mirror or just to really check in with your feet before you start doing this. You want to make sure your knees are going over your first and second toes, that you're not kind of going out or in with the heels or doing something funky. 3 like that, and then we'll reverse it. Lift through the heels. Really feel those 10 metatarsals supporting you as you come up and lift. They're going to be evenly weighted as you bend your knees. Place your heels down. Let's do 1 more for good measure. Excellent. Standing all the way up, you're going to take your right foot forward. And we're just going to start to move that right hip forward and back. So both legs are staying nice and long, nice and straight, as you're just kind of dipping back into this hip and then really kind of opening it out as you come forward. Just do that a few times, creating a little bit of movement there. And then you're going to take your back foot, you're going to turn it 90 degrees so your heels are in line with one another. Keep your right foot where it is and then bring that foot around so that it's 90 degrees to your front toes. So you're just stepping around that front leg. It's staying stable, it's staying where it is. I might step back a little bit so you can see my front foot a little bit better. There we go. There we go. Do whatever you need to with your arms to keep upright and stable here so that you can pivot and swivel around that front leg, creating a bit of movement, dynamic movement around that foot and leg that are anchored down. And it's good for your balance too. Let's do that a couple of times. And then bring that back foot behind again. You're going to take your hand onto your chest. So your right foot is forward. You're taking your right hand onto your chest and you're turning in towards that leg that's in front. So maybe put your left hand on your left hip. Encourage it to go back as you turn around away from your hip. So I don't mean that this left hip should move. I just mean that it doesn't want to come with you along for the ride. Do that 2 more times. Trying to keep your heart space lifted into your hand. And 1 more time for good measure. Good. And then bring that foot forward. Going to do the same thing on the other side. So take your foot back. Really make sure that both feet are parallel to each other to begin with. And you're just going to take your front hip forward and your front hip back. So it's almost like you're doing a little sachet in ballet down the front of the room. Maybe you've never done ballet, but you know, it's like that little kind of sassy movement with the hips. Spend a lot of our time not doing this kind of thing with our hips so they can get quite kind of frozen. Let's turn that back foot 90 degrees so that it's in line with the front heel, and then step it around and just create a little bit of movement, dynamic movement around your anchored foot and leg. Maybe your knee bends a little bit, that's okay. You can have a little bit of a give, but try not to bend too much. So it's not about a bending leg, it's about keeping kind of this real pivotal movement going. Just do that a couple more times. Yeah, I don't fall over. Here we go. Last time. Good. And then stepping that foot back, still, we're going to take the left hand now onto the left, the chest. Take the right hand onto the right hip. Nice big deep breath in, and as you exhale, you're turning in towards your left leg and then back. So the reason we're doing this is because it's a big part of our gait. So as we're walking around, there's this natural bit of rotation that happens. We're going to tie this in a second when we really have a look at starting to retrain our gait patterning, the way that we walk. Just do that 1 more time. And then let's get into that. So we're going to go back to having the right foot forward and the left foot back. And I want you to start to just bend your front knee, keeping your hips really level. So there shouldn't be any of this kind of tipping going on. See if you can sink your right hip kind of back to bend your knee maybe a little bit farther. Make sure your back heel is parallel right behind you and that you're really straightening through your back leg. All you're going to do now is straighten out your front leg, come up onto your 5 metatarsals on your back foot, and then bend the front knee again. So all we're doing is bending through the front knee to straighten out the back, and then straightening the front knee to come up onto the 5 metatarsals of the back foot. So the back leg is never bending. We're just kind of, and actually your weight isn't ever really shifting. out of either foot. You're keeping your weight pretty balanced. All we're doing is asking the back leg, the back foot, to peel away from the floor as you straighten out that front leg. Next step is to bring that foot forward so that you're stepping right next to the front foot and then taking it back. Seeing if you can keep the hips nice and balanced as you do that. Getting a lot of nice cracking and popping going through my feet, so I know I'm really moving things that needed to move. And then we're going to ask that to swing through. So notice my front foot isn't going anywhere. Still doing the same exact thing with my knee, straightening it out as the leg goes forward and bending as it goes back. Nothing changes there. Maybe you can get a little bit of this arm swinging to go on. To imagine that you're really taking a walk through the park now. Oh, where am I today? I am in an autumnal forest full of aspen trees, and I am just cruising. I'm strolling in this lovely, fresh autumnal air around me. Okay, let's bend that knee as it comes through. Now we're going for a little jog. Maybe there's a bear coming towards you, so you could pick up the pace a little bit more. And you could start to turn in towards that knee that's coming up. So remember how we just done this before, getting that little bit of rotation in towards that knee, that front leg that's coming towards you. Do that a couple more times. And then pause and rest. Just have a little walk around. Maybe shake those legs out, shake the arms out. Notice the difference between the two sides. So for me, what I can really feel is it feels like I've loosened off that leg that was doing the moving, and that I've done some work through that standing leg. It's not like it was just inactive and not doing anything. It feels like I've really kind of worked it. So let's do the other side. Take your left foot forward and your right foot back, bend through the front knee, and straighten out that back leg so that you're really creating length right out through the back of the heel. Level out the hips, and just use your hands as a little guide, maybe sinking back through that left hip a little bit further. And then just straighten the front leg, come up onto the ball of the back foot and switch. Do that a couple of times, seeing if you can maybe again have a mirror or something around where you can really notice what your back heel is wanting to do. Because all we're doing here is retraining the patterns of the steps that we take throughout the day. And if you're ingraining kind of unhealthy movements, like going out to the side with the heel every time that you walk around, then we're not really changing the strategies or teaching our bodies healthy movement. We're just keeping our same cycles of unhelpful, maybe injury-inducing strategies. Start to step that foot forward next to the other one, and then take it back. Just doing that a few times. And then start to swing it through. Let your arms just kind of dangle and see if you can get them going with your leg. See what kind of feels natural for you in terms of which arm is coming forward, which arm's going back. Start to bend that knee a little bit. We're taking a little faster stroll through the forest or wherever you are in your mind's eye as you do this. And then pick up the speed a little bit. Start to turn in towards that leg that's coming up. See if you can keep breathing as you do this. Really easy to hold the breath. Just going to do that twice more. And then letting that foot come down. Whew. Have a little walk around. Just notice how that's all feeling. Come to standing once again with the feet parallel to each other. And maybe just close the eyes for a second so you can really be aware of where you're aligning yourself in space over your feet. So lift all 10 toes, spread them out. from the little toe down to the big toe. So you're really aware of the support of the whole of the foot onto the ground. The ankles are aligned over your feet. The bones of the shins and the outer part of the leg, the knee, the thigh, the pelvis, your lower back, your ribs, your shoulders, your arms, your neck, and your head can all be over your feet. Once you found yourself aligned there, notice how much taller you've become, maybe opening the eyes so that you can just allow your chin to drop down to your chest, rolling forward, letting your arms remain heavy, your head, neck, and shoulders to remain nice and heavy, giving yourself a little shake out down here at the bottom, maybe bending through one knee and then the other. Just encouraging some length through the backs of the legs, backs of the knees. Straighten them out again, stand down into the feet. See if you can roll the pelvis back on top of itself, and then imagining there's a wall behind you that you could allow your body to align against once more. Just going to do another roll down here, dropping the chin down to the chest, lengthen through the back of the neck, arms heavy, head heavy, neck heavy, spinal column just flowing down with you as you go. Have a little wriggle, a little shake out down here, and then breathing all the way back through up to standing. Going to take your arms up to the ceiling, take your gaze up, try to leave your bottom ribs behind, reach all the energy out, and then give it all a little shake down. Thanks again for joining me. I hope you enjoyed that. Go out for a walk and just experiment with how that feels now. See you later.